Welcome to Think Up, Unlimited Possibilities, brought to you by Talkwa Network in Tampa, Florida. Now here's your host, Patricia V. Scott.
Oh, hello, there I am. This is Patricia. How are you? This is Think Up, Unlimited Possibilities, and we're here in beautiful Tampa, Florida, where it's, I think, about almost 90 degrees today. It was a really warm day. I took a nice walk in John Chestnut Park in Palm Harbor with all the critters. And tonight, I'm going to dedicate tonight's show to my kitty cat Scooter, who passed on Monday night. Made it to 18 years, and what a delight that little kitty was for that a little bit more than 18 years I had him. So I'm going to dedicate the show to my Scooter just because I can. And, this show is about up, right? Think up. And it's about staying up, being up, thinking positively, being in a positive state. And on this show, we talk a lot about state. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about a little bit more about the NLP side of the techniques and the strategies and the sciences that I have studied throughout my career. And NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. And I am trained in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, NLP, and a whole lot of other alphabet soup of techniques. And yet, it's not about that. These are all things that study human behavior, which has really been my interest, my curiosity, my whole life. I've always, I had a conversation with a friend of mine just the other night, and I was talking about, isn't it interesting how life happens to everybody? You know, life keeps happening, change keeps happening, and I talk about that roller coaster of the highs and lows of life, all of which are part of what make us who and what we are throughout our lifetime. And the higher the highs and the lower the lows, I think the more opportunities there are for gaining a quality of life, a more interesting wealth and richness of experience of life that can actually add to our quality of life. So, and in this conversation, we were talking about that some of my clients that come to me, they'll say, well, can't it just go smoothly for a while? You know, can't I just be bored for a little while? And be like, well, that would be nice, but life just doesn't always cooperate with us, does it? Sometimes we'd like to change the way things are. We'd like for things to be a little different than they are. And the good news is we are always in control. And what this show is about, we're always in control of our interpretation, because reality isn't what's happening around us. It's what we think about it, how we think about it. And that's what this show is about. This show is about thinking up, thinking in a way that allows you to be resourceful, to be in a resourceful state to deal with whatever's happening. And that's kind of been my source of studying throughout my lifetime, and that's why I wanted to start this show, this radio show. And most of the shows we're doing to help people to understand what that's about, because a lot of people think life just happens and they have responses and reactions to it, and they don't think they have any control over their emotions and that kind of thing. And this show is about helping you to understand you really do have control. Your emotions are at the unconscious level, and they're based on what you think about. You entertain a thought, I like to say, and whatever thought you are entertaining, your emotions and your physical bodily functions and all the chemicals that are being released from the brain and the body and the hormones and all that stuff, they're all released based on your internal representation of what life is. So it isn't what's happening, it's how you interpret it, how you filter it, we like to say. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about ways to realize that you do have complete and absolute 100% control over how you choose to think about anything that happens in life. And this week really has been a roller coaster for me of highs and some dips there. And it's really interesting. Last night we did a master class at the Up Hypnosis Institute in Palm Harbor, which is my place of business there. And once a month we do a master class, and it's a continuing education credits for hypnotherapists, hypnotists. And then we invite the general public to come and to be practice clients. It's turned into a really nice way for people to be able to experience hypnosis with a professional in a setting that's, safe and all of that and supervised, professionally supervised. And people always, without exception, have interesting aha moments, I like to call them, those wow moments. And last night was not an exception to that. So the night before, we had done a meetup, and we do have a Palm Harbor Hypnosis and NLP meetup that meets about every 2 months. We don't do it on a regular schedule, but we had a whole room full of people, and it was very fascinating. A lot of NLP practitioners, hypnosis people, and a whole lot of people from a lot of different walks of life that came in, and we were doing rapid inductions. And it was an interesting class because a lot of people that knew very little to nothing about hypnosis and inducing states of hypnosis. And then we also had some very experienced professionals there. So it was a nice mix of people. And it's interesting when you start talking about inducing hypnosis, it's really about changing a brainwave state. That's the way I like to think of it. The hypnotic state is a brainwave state that is, in the books it says an altered state of consciousness. I always found that fascinating. When we're trained in hypnosis, that's one of the definitions we're given, and it's in all the books. But what is an altered state? That implies that there's a normal state, doesn't it? So if you're excited, that's an altered state. If you're asleep, that's an altered state. Hypnosis, generally speaking, is thought to be when you drift from full conscious beta consciousness, which really we're not in that much of the day to begin with, but moving from that into that light alpha state, which is a little bit of a slowed down state, and then into theta when you get really good at it, which is where I would like to stay all the time, personally. I think I do a lot of the time. And, basically it's a brainwave state. And it's, when we do it on purpose, on last night before last, when we were doing rapid inductions, the idea is to get there quickly. And most of the time it's just a matter of believing you can do it and some practice. And people wanting to know, well, what is it like to be in hypnosis? And I go, well, have you ever driven somewhere and you don't remember making the turns and you're daydreaming about something else, and next thing you know, you're there and you don't know how you got there? You weren't consciously making the turns or paying attention to the street signs or anything. That's a state of hypnosis, and obviously you're doing it not for a purpose of achieving a goal like we do in my profession, but the hypnotic state is something we are in a lot of the day. Whenever you're on automatic, pretty much, that's when you're in hypnosis. If you're a creative person, if you're a musician or a performer of any kind, and I've talked a little bit about my past life in show business when I was an actor and a singer and a songwriter and those kind of creative endeavors. If you do anything like that or play instruments, you really go into the hypnotic brainwave state to do anything creative, because you can't create with your conscious mind. You can decide you want to create with your conscious mind, and yet when it's time to actually create, you have to kind of let that consciousness step aside. Like when you're watching a movie, if you're analyzing the movie the whole time and thinking about, what the actor is doing and how they're doing it or how the story is coming out, you're not going to really enjoy it. But if you actually just watch the movie and let go, your emotions start to take over and you drift into that alpha state, that light hypnotic state where you can just enjoy. And what we know in the fields of study that I practice and that I teach is that the creative imagination runs the show. It runs all of the bodily functions follow the imagination, which is why people who imagine something horrible is going to happen all the time can create ulcers and all kinds of impressive expressions, panic attacks, all those kind of things. So what we're going to talk about tonight is one of the fields of study, science of the mind, which is what hypnosis and NLP both are. One of the fields of study in the more recent history that has been developed to help us understand how the mind and the body work and how to intentionally change things, how to change and shift our state on purpose, and how to train in, if you will, the ability to be in a more resourceful state during times of perhaps stress or chaos in our life. And isn't that a wonderful thing to learn how to do? So when we talk about NLP, I'm going to go into a little bit of the history of it because it really is, like I said, it's a recent science that really came out of studying hypnosis and family therapy and some other styles of change work. And Richard Bandler and John Grinder created and coined the phrase neurolinguistic programming, which is what NLP is. And basically, it was created in the mid 1970s, so it is fairly recent, although I guess it's getting farther away all the time. But in the 1970s at UC Santa Cruz is where it first started. And it was conceived by John Grinder, who was a PhD, a professor of linguistics, and Richard Bandler, who was a graduate student. In a sense, NLP is a discovery rather than a creation. And Grinder and Bandler began with the understanding of general semantics, linguistics, and Gestalt therapy, which is Fritz Perls, of course. And John Grinder was especially interested in the utilization of language to affect human behavior. So it's about communication. We teach certification trainings in NLP at the Up Hypnosis Institute in Palm Harbor, which is my company, my institute. And I utilize the wonderful guru of NLP. I call him Michael Watson. And if you are interested in NLP or watching some of these rapid change techniques in action on YouTube, you can find Michael Watson pretty much all over the place there. And I hooked up with him. I met him many years ago back in California. And when I met him, I didn't know why or how, but you know how when you meet someone and you think there's a connection there. I just had an instant connection with Michael Watson. And I was living in California at the time, and he was living in Orlando. He was out there for an American Board of Hypnotherapy conference, and I met him there, and we kind of hung out for the whole weekend together. And I just, after that conference, I kept having this feeling that I was supposed to do something or have some connection with him out in the future. And in a very short amount of time, my husband got transferred to Florida, and I found myself here in the Tampa Bay area. And of course, reconnected with him up in Orlando. And ever since then, which was about 11 years ago since I moved here, we've been working together. And since I started the Up Hypnosis Institute, he is my go-to guy for neurolinguistic programming. And he's going to be coming in to do a certification training in August, I believe we're starting it. And it's a 5-weekend training. Before that, I'm going to do a 2-weekend NLP primer. And I have a little booklet here on that, which I've done before in some other cities, but just for people who maybe don't want to get certified, but just are interested in the basic concepts and the principles of NLP, which is really what it is. The study of NLP that Bandler and Grinder came up with, again, it's about communication, it's about rapport, and it's about state changing, being able to make rapid changes in behaviors and perhaps changing some of your feelings about past experiences, which is sometimes a nice thing to be able to do. And then, of course, certification is for people who want to help others to do that same thing. But we get a lot of people who come just for themselves. And that's pretty much how I started, was doing this work for myself, and then ended up becoming certified in both of these things about 21 years ago, and the rest is history, as we say. And I'm sure I'll be studying these things for the rest of my life, because what brought me to this was the realization that the human mind in functioning the body can achieve some amazing things. And I do a lot of medical hypnotherapy and work with a lot of medical issues, where I realize that when you get in alignment with thought and imagery and get that imagination in the right direction, that the physical body can achieve some pretty miraculous things as far as healing. And that's where my general focus is these days, in these techniques and in this science of the mind, as they say. So as far as what NLP is used for, it's used in business. For a while, I was working in aerospace out in California between my two careers. I found myself in aerospace industry, and I was taking a lot of management classes and that kind of thing. And NLP was actually in those trainings for team building, for negotiating, for communicating, all those things. And in the NLP, I was really fascinated that it was introduced to me from that field as well as from the field of hypnotherapy. So it's in sales trainings, a lot of sales trainings use it because it is about communication. It's about gaining rapport, communicating effectively. And about a few days ago, about a week ago, I gave a talk for a nannies group, a nannies training day. And I was talking about using these kinds of techniques for helping people to elicit uh, communication styles and be able to get your message across. Because when you're dealing with children, teenagers, that kind of thing, a lot of times people get frustrated because they feel like the message they're giving out is not the one getting received on the other end of that communication loop. And that's where these techniques, that's what these are all about. And I was talking to them about that communication. They talk about only 7% of our communication is actually the words we use, although words are very powerful because when you are speaking words, people are making those internal representations. So that is powerful, but it's the tonality, supposedly, according to some experts in the field, they say is about 38%. So it's the tone and the way you use your voice, which is very important in the kind of work I do, obviously. And then that 55% is physiology. So that nonverbal communication. And a lot of these things, again, we detect at the unconscious level. And the science of NLP and hypnotherapy are about learning to do it on purpose, to really fine tune your what we call sensory acuity, so that when you're in the presence of someone wanting to have an effective communication of some kind, that you really can pick up on those nonverbal communication cues, and that it can start to be an unconscious ability that can be trained in. And we all do it on some level, but this is about training it in efficiently and effectively so that you can use it again. It can be used for sales, for marketing and sales, communication, negotiating skills. A lot of lawyers are getting into learning NLP. We had one in the class the other night that came because he's interested in using it to help to influence judges and juries and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, that's an interesting use of this because you can't not communicate. If you think about it, you are always communicating, even when you are silent. If there is someone else around, you are communicating something all the time. So these techniques are about learning how to communicate more efficiently, more appropriately for whatever the outcome is that you're looking for. And so when you talk about all of those, the different communication amounts, if you can get all of the parts of your communication vehicle, so to speak, in line, and if you can get it all going in the same direction and be congruent with all of your communication and be in tune to what the response is on the other end of that, on the receiving end of what you're wanting to communicate, then you're going to be able to be much more successful in all of your communications and all of your human interactions. And there's a saying in our field about the person with the most flexibility is going to win the interaction. If you're flexible enough to keep adjusting your communication, your approach, and if you have a lot more options open to what you're able to do, and you can keep making those adjustments, then you're pretty much going to get the outcome that you're looking for. And these techniques, NLP and hypnosis, is all about outcomes. It's all about what is the end result that you're looking for in that interaction. So back to the beginnings of NLP, we talked about starting in Santa Cruz, John Grinder and Richard Bandler, and Virginia Satir is a part of these beginnings, and she was known as the grandmother of family therapy. I think she actually coined the term family therapy. And so Richard and John were studying this woman, Virginia Satir, and she was especially impressive, as it seemed that her effectiveness as a therapist was a result of a natural skill that she had with language. So they were studying her for the putting together all of these techniques that they ended up doing for NLP. And she was someone who always got more and more specific. And then they also studied Milton Erickson, who was just the opposite. He was a storyteller, and he was someone who used a lot of metaphor and inference and a little bit more of a vague type of. So it was just the opposite of Virginia Satir. But all of these people they studied, they ended up putting together these wonderful techniques that ended up being what we now call NLP. And my goodness, there's some interesting sounds in the next room there. So what I want to talk about tonight, I'm going to get into a little bit of the basic premises, because NLP is more of an attitude. I like to think of it as an attitude. It's more of kind of it becomes just a way of being, a way of thinking, a general attitude, like I said, of how you approach situations. So there are some very basic principles in NLP, and I'm going to find them here in a second. And the presuppositions for NLP that we talk about in training, once you hold on to these things, I like to think of it with hypnosis when I'm working with clients and things like that. It's about holding on to a certain attitude, a certain way of thinking about the world. And as long as you hold on to these, what we call presuppositions of and this is hypnotic language, and NLP kind of adopted these. This is also in the NLP world, that it just changes the way that you're thinking about things in a way that can be helpful for a rapid change. So the effectiveness of the presuppositions arise from the fact that they have a profound impact on the representations that the client is making, that people make. Becoming aware of what is presupposed in someone's language can give you useful information about understanding how they model the world, how someone thinks about it. Like I said, we all have our own internal representation of what is happening around us. And you can have 10 people that are experiencing the same exact situation externally, and they will all have a different response, a different impression of it. And if you interview people after, let's say, a traffic accident or something, you're going to find that they all have different impressions of what happened. And sometimes they're very different. And it's because of the filters that they have and the way that they interpret, so to speak, at the unconscious level. So we're going to talk a little bit about the presuppositions for NLP. And one of the presuppositions is that the map is not the territory. When we talk about NLP and internal representations, a person's map of the world, again, is not actually what's happening. It's how they're interpreting it. It's how their internal representations are being formed based on their filters. Now, the filters are formed through their I think I'm going to pause here for a second. Okay, let me regroup here. Okay, so the map is not the territory is where we left off here. Like I was saying, NLP isn't really techniques, it's an attitude out of which the techniques have been formed. So an NLP practitioner holds in consciousness certain principles that guide their thinking and their approach when working with people for helping them to change whatever it is their desired outcome is that they're looking for. These principles are fundamental to the NLP approach, and it's out of these principles that new techniques can be created on the spot to accommodate every unique situation. This is the true magic of NLP. Like I said, it's more of an attitude, and the techniques are always changing. Since the 70s, some of these basic things that were created in NLP have evolved through the years. And the true magic is in being in the moment with someone in that communication style, having that communication channel open, and allowing yourself to create on the spot again, it's about that creative mind. That's where the hypnosis, being that creative mind and the unconscious mind, letting it take over and opening that channel. So the map isn't the territory, and that's one of the major NLP principles. And what it means is that we all filter information again through our attitudes, our perceptions, our beliefs, our values, and other learned responses. This filtered information forms our map, so to speak, our model of reality. In our ongoing experience, we operate within our map, our perception of the world, and what the experience means to us. If we change the map, we change the experience of the reality, and thus the feelings, the emotions, the responses. And that's where knowing that and holding on to that, we can help people to change their map, and then their whole experience changes. Another NLP presupposition principle is that people work perfectly. No one is wrong or broken. So it starts with the premise that everything's functioning exactly as is appropriate for what has been happening up to that moment, or what's been trained in up to that moment. This is a very unique presupposition of NLP. It states that it starts with the idea that no one needs to be fixed. And that's very different from some of the other models of change work or psychotherapy or even medicine. It's like, what's wrong and how can we fix it? With these techniques, it starts with this very basic premise, this principle that no one is broken, no one needs to be fixed. And it assumes that people are intrinsically healthy and working perfectly based on, again, all of the conscious and unconscious choices that have been made up until the point, right now, up until this point in time. So in NLP, there's an understanding that the results people have in their lives, either wanted or unwanted ones, by the way, make sense given the way that they process the information and organize their thinking. In a particular response that they have, if the response they have isn't appropriate, if they really want to change the response, if it's inappropriate in some context, perhaps, maybe it's appropriate in one area, and yet in another area it may not be appropriate, then NLP can be used to remap the strategy for the desired behavior, or just to remap it in a particular context. And again, I was in a discussion the other night about emotions. I think a lot of them tonight, by the way. And, it's about, there is no bad emotion. I really believe that. Emotions are an amazing thing, and they're a great way to express. They're a great way to that we can move through life and have these emotions. A lot of people try to fight them, or they, resist them. And yet, if you allow an emotion to come forth when it is appropriate, then most of the time it isn't going to be problematic down the road. And I think a lot of times when I see people that have issues with emotions, it's because they've been suppressing them and they haven't allowed themselves to, or they think they're bad emotions, or trying to fight them or something. And in that case, it can become problematic. So this is about realizing, again, that there is no wrong or broken, or nothing needs to be fixed. It's about what's happening is appropriate based on the result of whatever has been thought up till that moment in time. And that with NLP, again, has these great strategies where we can realize that we can change that map for that particular context, and that the person can then be more efficient in different contexts. So again, fear is an emotion that some people think is a bad emotion, and yet fear is very appropriate in some situations. It's even anger. There are certain, in certain contexts, all emotions are appropriate. Sadness is appropriate in a certain context. It's when it filters into other areas where it isn't appropriate that it becomes problematic. And that's when you can use these techniques. Another basic principle of NLP is choice is better than no choice. And that might sound a little bit obvious, but the idea of it is that the system, meaning the person, whether it's a person, an institution, a company, a country, and you could apply this again on the level of the cells of the body even. So everything pretty much universally, you can, whatever the system, you can apply this to. The system with the most choices or flexibility has the best chance of success, survival, and or influence. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. If you're talking about communication, using this for communicating with people or negotiation or sales, if the person that has the most flexibility in their style of communication is the one that's going to end up succeeding. John Grinder, who again was one of the creators of NLP, he put it this way. He says, one choice is no choice. Two choices is a dilemma. And three or more choices is choice. So many people feel that they do what they do because they aren't there aren't any other options, or they just can't help it. In NLP, we help people to develop more choices for themselves, and that's the way I think of the science of NLP and hypnosis and all these techniques. It's about getting people to realize, because when someone's stuck, it's because they really don't think they have a choice. They feel that helpless mindset of, I don't think I have any choice in this matter. And these techniques are about realizing that you do have choices. People always have choices in any situation of how they can think about it in a way that can be more resourceful. So that's what that presupposition of choice is better than no choice. One of the other principles is that people make the best choice that's available to them. People do the best they can given the resources available to them. And the issue is making more resources available. And that's where NLP can be useful. When someone has resentment or bitterness over someone in their life, maybe a parent or a guardian that wasn't as resourceful perhaps as they should have been, or that they wished they had been, or didn't give them something that maybe they thought they needed when they were younger. You can't change history, but you can change the reality of how you think about it in a way by realizing that person was only doing the best they could with the perhaps limited resources that they had available at the time. And by getting that realization in these processes, you can actually change your feelings about that. And that resentment and bitterness can go away based on realizing that person was just doing the best they could do. And that gives the person right now more choices in how they can feel about it. And that's what this is all about. Another principle is the meaning of your communication is the response you get. And that's what I was talking about earlier. In the communication loop, so to speak, there's the person putting out the information, the person receiving the information is the one, that's where the meaning is. Because you may think you mean something. And when I was talking to the nanny group the other day, you can talk to children and say something over and over the old saying of how many times do I have to say it, But if you keep saying it over and over and over hundreds of times and the person still isn't getting it, then you need to have some flexibility and be able to change your communication style. And that's, again, what these techniques are all about. It's about being able to have more choices available and to realize and to get that feedback of what the communication that's being received on the receiving end of what you're putting out. And if the receiver isn't getting it in the way that you would like it to be able to adjust your style, your communication style, in line with being able to get the meaning across the way that you really want to. So while your intention may be clear to you, if the other person's interpretation or their response it's on that end that reflects your effectiveness. And you have to, if you're closed to that, then you're not going to be able to adjust your techniques of communication style to be able to get that point across, so to speak. NLP teaches you the skills and flexibility to ensure that the message you send equals the message that they receive. And that's what that principle is all about. One of my favorite principles of NLP is that there's no failure, only feedback. When I'm working with clients with hypnotherapy and NLP and in doing change work with people, this is a very freeing idea to put out to people, because someone that is stuck or that is having a challenge in their life, or whether it's physical, mental, emotional, doesn't really matter, because everything affects everything, and it's going to be affecting all aspects of their life anyway. But whatever the presenting thing is that they're coming to someone for change work, and that they're not being able to be as resourceful or effective in that area of their life, they're usually beating themselves up and very upset with themselves about it. And what this principle says is that there is no failure. There's only feedback. And when someone's working on something, if they aren't getting the result that they would like to get as quickly as they would like to get it, they get stuck sometimes in that self, just beating themselves up and feeling badly that they aren't accomplishing something, or that they aren't accomplishing it as quickly as they'd like to. So this is about every response that you get has value, in that you can learn more about what adjustments to make. So you're getting that feedback. If you're looking at it as failure or it was wrong, then you're going to miss what aspects of lessons are in there that are embedded in that experience. And I call it taking the color off of it, taking that opinion that it was wrong or a failure. And by looking at it just purely as an experience, as feedback, you can look at it and say, well, what is useful, if anything, or what can I learn from this? And whatever isn't, you can just throw out and get rid of and build on whatever is there that might be useful for whatever outcome you're looking for. So what some call failure may have been success if they just wouldn't have given up. And there's an old saying, I think, about that failure is only success that stopped too soon, or something like that. So successful people believe that you never fail, and that every adversity presents seeds of possibilities. And I like that word, possibilities. So there are seeds of possibilities in every event that can be of some benefit and can serve them in some positive way. You always succeed in producing an outcome. If you think of it like that, you always succeeded. You got some outcome. And if you look at it like a successful outcome of something based on whatever you did, then you can say, well, now this isn't the outcome that I want to keep producing. So if you succeeded in this outcome by acting and thinking in a certain way, then you can make some adjustments in how you think and act in order to create a different outcome. So it takes all of that negativity out of it. So you always succeed in producing some outcome, and how you choose to use it is up to you. And one of the other principles of NLP, basic principles, is that behind every behavior is a positive intention. This is sometimes a challenging one for some people to believe, but there are a lot of techniques in the work that I do. And behind the idea of thinking up, of being, and again, when I say thinking up, it doesn't mean putting rose-colored glasses on and being happy, ha-ha, all the time. Believe me, the last few days I haven't exactly been thrilled and happy, And yet I keep wanting, at least my goal is to keep thinking about my cat that I had for 18 years, and thinking about all the silly, funny things that he did. And when my mind goes down in that other direction, which it did a little while ago, when I got quiet there for a few seconds or however long that was, that I can, pick back up, take a nice deep breath, my little anchor there, my NLP anchor, and just how can I think in this moment that's going to allow me to get back on track, get into a more productive, successful direction, or a more up direction. So it's more about being resourceful. It's about moving through a situation and not letting yourself get stuck and bogged down in that moment, or even starting to go in that negative spiral down in the wrong direction. So that's more what that means. That every behavior has a positive intention. This definitely can be challenging. It's a challenging concept for some people to fully grasp and to accept. Yet I've found that it is it's very possibly the most important principle of NLP and of hypnotherapy and all these techniques that I have come to in my life's mission here of wanting to understand human behavior. And this principle means that there's no part of you that's bad, regardless of what unwanted behavior perhaps, or a habit, or a response, or a condition, or whatever labels medical or mental health people put on the person. That there is no bad expression. Every behavior that has been learned serves some purpose. With NLP, we can discover new, more appropriate ways to serve that same purpose. So that's what that's about. So, in order to understand how these changes occur, again, I'm going to get a little bit into the unconscious, about the unconscious. You can't change what you don't accept as your creation, is one of the principles behind NLP, the basic NLP. And at first, that simple statement might seem to make practical sense. But as is the case with most profound ideas, its simplicity may cause one to underestimate its ability to create complex change when fully accepted. So think about that again. You can't change what you don't accept as your creation. And then somebody might say, well, I didn't create this condition or disease. And again, sometimes people are putting the blame on something outside of themselves, but you always have a part to play in everything that happens in your life, even if it's just by virtue of being, or of being in a certain place at a certain time. You always have you always have a part in the creation, and it's not about blame or any of that. It's about just realizing that you do have some power about that. And that's where you start with that. So the most profound idea in this is that you once you accept that you have a part in the creation of something, now you have the power to change it. If it's completely and totally someone else's cause for whatever your problem or your condition or your whatever is, then you have no power over it. So this is about accepting your part in the experience. So this theory that you're always at cause and play a part in creating everything by your conscious and unconscious choices. It's very empowering. Once you accept the part you play in causing whatever's happening, then you have the power. You have some power in making changes in that. So the sum total of all of our conscious plus our unconscious choices creates everything in our life. And it's a simple matter of results versus reasons. So a lot of times when people come to me and they're stuck in a problem, a condition, a emotional, mental, physical, again, it doesn't matter what it is. If someone is stuck, a lot of times it's because they feel that they're the effect. They feel that that someone else or something else is the reason why they have their problem. As soon as they start to take some active role in their situation is when they start to find some power over making some changes in it. So one of the premises of this work that I do is that all learning, all behavior, and all change is unconscious. And if you think about it like that, people are always, a lot of times, people are wanting to use willpower, conscious effort, that conscious part of their mind. And they're like, well, I should be able to do this. Using that conscious willpower, if you're fighting the unconscious, you're going to lose every time, because the unconscious mind is where all learning and behavior occurs. It's where change occurs. And when you use willpower, you might succeed briefly or for a short amount of time. And in the long run, it's, as soon as you get distracted with life or you get a little bit stressed out, you're going to end up with that unconscious program kicking right back in, and until you get into the unconscious level and change that. So when we talk about the unconscious mind, it has some very prime directives. So let's talk a little bit about what the unconscious mind does. It stores your memories, temporal in relationship to time, and atemporal, not in relationship to time. So it stores all of your memories. It makes associations, it links similar things and ideas, and it learns very quickly. Organizes all of our memories, and organizes it like sometimes we use things like timelines. The mechanics is the Gestalt. Represses memories with unresolved negative emotion, and that's sometimes in order to protect us. If there's unresolved memories, unresolved emotions, it can repress the memory. May keep the repressed emotions repressed for protection, like I just said. It runs the body. It has a blueprint of the body now, of perfect health in the higher self, so to speak. It preserves the body and maintains the integrity of the body. And this is one of the things that's very helpful to know when working with physical types of conditions or diseases or things that people have been given labels or diagnosed with, because the unconscious mind maintains the integrity of the body. So you really, according to these kinds of techniques, you want to get to that part of the mind in order to access the the healing ability, because that is where, at the unconscious level, where the healing part of the mind is. And it knows what's going on in every cell, in every muscle, in every bone, in all the parts of the body. And the unconscious mind is going to act on whatever you're holding in consciousness, in the belief system, and all those things. So it preserves the integrity of the body, and always wants to move in the direction of what is most healthy, what is in balance with that blueprint we talked about earlier. It's the domain of the emotions. We call it the seat of the emotions, is the unconscious mind, which is why when you consciously hold a thought in your imagination, the emotions are going to follow the imagination. Again, it doesn't follow necessarily what reality is. It follows your interpretation, your impression, your internal representation of what reality is. So the unconscious is a highly moral being, the morality that you were taught and accepted. So whatever your values, your morals that you have in your unconscious mind, that we're taught in, that we're trained in, or whatever that you have accepted, that is what it's always going to be acting on, which is why someone in a stage show that's hypnotized won't do anything against their morals. And that's kind of a false misconception about people that are hypnotized based on old movies and things like that, and Manchurian Candidate and things like that, where somebody's hypnotized and told to do something that is against their morals, and they do it, or hurt someone or whatever. And someone won't do that. If someone's morals are to be very modest, they're not going to strip in a hypnosis show. They just won't. So that's to know that the unconscious mind is always holding on to those morals. It enjoys serving, and it needs clear orders to follow. And that's one of the things I was talking to the nannies group the other day about. You know, if you tell a child, don't go play in the street, that's not a very efficient mode of communication for the unconscious mind, because you put the idea out there now, play in the street. And the unconscious, it can't process that negative necessarily, at least not directly. If you say, don't do something, or stop doing something, you know, don't is not an action word. So the unconscious is always waiting for clear actions that you are asking it to do. And if you say, don't go play in the street to a child, the next thought in their head may be, oh, play in the street. I wasn't thinking of that a minute ago, but now that you mentioned it, it sounds interesting, you know, and you just put the thought in their head. So it's the idea of putting out a clear direction, a clear action that you want. When someone says, I don't want to eat chocolate, you know, that's not a efficient way to be holding on to a thought that's going to get you a positive result from the unconscious mind, because you've got that thought of chocolate in there. So it's like, what do you want to do instead of that? What is the action? What is the actual thing you're asking your unconscious to help you to do? And we call that reframing, and we can do a whole show on that later. But the unconscious also controls and maintains all perceptions, regular and telepathic. It receives and transmits perceptions to the conscious mind. So it generates, stores, and distributes, transmits energy. It maintains instincts and generates habits. All habits live at the unconscious mind. Once they're trained in, again, remember, all learning occurs at the unconscious level. So once you've trained something in, it becomes unconscious. So it maintains all of the habits. If you're trying to change a habit and you're doing it with your conscious mind, you're pretty much wasting your time, because you have to get to the unconscious part of the mind and install, so to speak, a new habit. And that's what these techniques are all about. It's programmed to, the unconscious is programmed to continually seek more and more. There's always more to discover. It functions best as a whole integrated unit, doesn't need parts to function. It's symbolic. It uses in response to symbols. Again, the imagination. It takes everything personally. The basis of perception is projection. It works on the principle of least effect, the path of least resistance. So whatever's the easiest, the most automated, easiest, least resistant choice in the situation is what the unconscious is going to choose. does not process negatives directly, and we were just talking about that. Our subconscious creates our behavior based on what we focus on. I've mentioned in previous shows about we move in the direction of our most dominant thoughts. So whatever you're thinking about most of the time throughout the day is the direction that your unconscious is going to go in. And whatever you're focused on, how you think about it, your internal representations of external events is what's going to drive the show, so to speak. The diagram in the unconscious level is going to be built on whatever your perceptions are. And let's see here. What else can we get into here? We only have about 7 or 8 minutes left. But I want to talk a little bit about, again, the NLP training we have coming up, because these basic principles are kind of the very foundation, so to speak, for the change work that we do in NLP. And also they come from the world of hypnosis as well. And I am a little less focused tonight than I thought I was going to be, I have to admit, from what's been going on the last week. A lot of highs and lows again, that roller coaster of life. And the last couple of days, we've had some really great classes with a lot of interesting people and questions, and been going through a lot of changes in my life in the last few days. So tonight, I'm interested in just sharing with you some of the things that are coming up at the Up Hypnosis Institute. And again, you're listening to Think Up. This is Unlimited Possibilities. And that's what all of these techniques, all of these processes, all of these fields of study, science of the mind that I'm talking about in these shows is all based on. Unlimited possibilities. There are always, again, we were talking about choice earlier, there are always more choices available in any given situation than what we usually consciously can conceive of. And it's a matter of getting into that creative mind, that unconscious mind that can access and create more options, more choices. That's what all of these processes are about. And the NLP, we're going to be doing a 5-week certification training starting in August, 5 weekends rather, and they're not consecutive. They're about every other weekend, I believe, is the way it works out. And Michael Watson is going to be doing it. You can go on YouTube and look up Michael Watson, and he's got a lot of little demos and things on there. He does a lot of work in England at a place called Salad, and he's a great person to watch to show some of these quick change NLP techniques. And there are a lot of other great people in the field, obviously, all over the place that are doing this. And Michael Watson is now licensed through the Society of NLP through Richard Bandler's organization, and he's going to be working with me to become a trainer for them. I've been doing some teaching and training of NLP on little short classes and weekend classes and things like that, and I'm going to be doing this 2-day NLP primer, which I've done before in July. That's a 2-day class. And but now that Michael Watson is working through the Bandler Society of NLP, I'm going to be becoming a trainer for him, or with him, I should say, and be working with him in August for that. So if anyone is interested in learning NLP, we are just finishing up a hypnosis certification training, which is a 6-weekend training. We'll be doing another one in the fall, early winter, probably starting that in September or so. And that's a 6-weekend class through the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. And I do want to mention in a couple of weeks, the weekend of May 15th, I think it is, I'm going to be presenting at the International Association of Counselors and Therapists and the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association conference in beautiful Daytona Beach, Florida. And they also have a virtual conference available if anyone's interested, where you can do it on the internet. I think you pay whatever it is, and then you have access for a couple of weeks to watch all of the seminars. But I always think, why would you do that when you can have an excuse to go to beautiful Daytona Beach and hang out on the beach and go to the conference and see everyone live and in person? But they get people at this conference from all over the world, literally. And you can go to iact.org, IACT for the International Association of Counselors and Therapists.org, or the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association, which is imdha.com, and find out about those conferences. And I'm going to be also going to Las Vegas in June to present at the HypnoThoughts Live conference, and you can go to hypnothoughts.com to get information on that one. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of good resources available for people wanting to learn more about how to use their mind, and that's what this is all about. The hypnosis training that we do, the certification training, is the art, science, and practice of hypnosis, because that is what it is. And it's all about learning how to use the mind more efficiently, more appropriately. And you are listening to Think Up Unlimited Possibilities. And I apologize for being a little out of focus tonight. This is Scooter kind of threw me off here a little bit. Got my mind on other things here tonight. So we're getting down to the last couple of minutes here. I do want to remind you, you're listening to Talk WAD. This is the Talk WAD network. TalkWAD.com is the radio station that you're listening to. And I am on every Thursday night, 7:30 to 8:30. Live, or you can go and see the archived shows anytime. And there's a lot of great classes coming up for the general public and for hypnosis and NLP practitioners for continuing education at the Up Hypnosis Institute. So you can go to uphypnosis.com and you can see all the different things we do. I teach self-hypnosis classes. We have hypnotic fat band training coming up, seminar for the general public. We've got a living smoke-free seminar coming up later this month. And so I hope you will join me in future shows where we will discuss and flesh out some more of these principles and ideas about NLP and hypnosis and related fields, because that's not all that this show is about. It's mostly about how to be more resourceful in your life, how to stay up, how to stay positive, and how to enjoy every minute of life and get more out of life every moment, even when sad things happen, like my kitty cat. And you know what? I wouldn't trade those 18 years for anything. That's the part of it that's interesting, is that, life keeps going, and as long as I wake up and my eyes open, I figure there's more to do. So I hope you will join me again and come often to the show and call in if you like sometime. I don't think I even gave the number out tonight, but go to uphypnosis.com, give me a call, send me an email, and I'm happy to help you with your continuing education and your curiosities about how the mind and body work. So this is Patricia V. Scott, and I'm going to check out for now. And remember to think up.
Thank you for watching Think Up, Unlimited Possibilities with Patricia V. Scott. Brought to you by the Talk WAD Network in Tampa, Florida.